Hi, I'm Jesse Abelman, and I teach in the Yesodot program at Drisha. This week's Parsha is Parashat Yitro, and in this Parsha comes one of the most central, pivotal moments in the travels of Bnei Israel from Egypt to the land of Israel. In Parashat Yitro, Bnei Israel received the Torah from God at Mount Sinai. But before they can do that, they have to get to Mount Sinai. When they arrive, Moshe ascends the mountain to talk to God in order to get the instructions as to what's going to happen leading up to the revelation at Sinai. And I just want to read you quickly what he said, what the Torah says about this. It says, "Moshe ala Elohim vayikra elav Adonai min hahar." And Moses went up to God, the Lord called to him from the mountain. So first he goes up, and then God calls him, and he says some stuff. This, I think, seems a little bit backwards. Normally, God would call, and then you'd go. And the 12th century commentator Ibn Ezra picks up on this, and he says, exactly right, it's flipped. First God called, and then Moses went, and the Torah did not put it in chronological order. Ramban, Moshe ben Nachman, disagrees with this strongly, and he says directly to Ibn Ezra is wrong. He says the Torah says what it says, and what happens is this. Moses approaches the mountain, he comes to the edge of the mountain, he ascends to God, but not onto the mountain, at which point God then calls to him and gives him the instructions. So Ibn Ezra's comment is very peculiar, because Ibn Ezra is traditionally a very literal interpreter, but here he wants to flip the entire order of the verse on its head. And I think this is coming from a deep ideological perspective. Ibn Ezra says very specifically, why does he say this? Why does it have to be flipped? It has to be flipped because Moses would not ascend onto God's mountain without permission. You don't approach God, you don't step into that sacred space unless God gives you explicit instructions. And Nachmanides, Ramban, says the reverse. He says, no, you have to approach God. Moses has to come to God first, and only then does God give him the instructions, tell him what he needs to do. So I think these are two different approaches that we can also have in our lives as we approach God. And it's a difficult thing to negotiate. Sometimes it's important to follow strictly exactly what God says and wait for God to say. Wait for the Torah to tell us exactly what we need to do, how we need to serve. And sometimes we need to take that extra step and move forward and try hard to approach God and hear what He has to tell us. And so the question I want to leave you with at the end of this Dvar Torah is, how do we figure that out? I want us to think about how we know when it is that we need to work to step closer and when we need to step back and listen. Shabbat Shalom.